Nolan McCoy is the head of video and creative content at Chili Piper, a B2B SaaS brand that made a lot of waves in 2023 and will no doubt continue to do so in 2024. In this episode, Nolan talks about the shift that's happening in content marketing right now, from purely written and SEO-driven content to video, podcasts, and other forms of media. He shares what this shift looks like and what it means for marketers, as well as how brands can adapt in order to stay ahead, adapt and win. He also shares his creative process when it comes to creating impactful video content and why it's important to collect ideas from around the organization. We also talk about trends in owned media, their experiments creating B2B TikTok content, and how they're currently building a community around their company profile on LinkedIn. Something that's notoriously hard in a world where people are becoming more comfortable engaging with other people. Do enjoy.
That's a really interesting place to start, actually, as we're recording, right? So you just said before we hit record that you think that the content marketing role is going to change over the next couple of years. In what way? How do you think it's going to change?
Yeah, so like obviously to paint the landscape, content marketing has been traditionally written content. And now we're in a place where we know that video is a important, if not one of the most important parts of a content strategy, but it's not a means to an end. We have also podcasting, and we have blog, and we have videos, and we have content that fits in between. Where does TikTok go? I don't know. Is that social media? Is it content marketing? I don't know. But so I think the role of a content marketer is going to move from that writer, SEO heavy, to more of a content strategist, looking at the whole big picture of where either the brand or the personal brand or whatever that marketer is serving, where that strategy is going to go as a multimedia content strategy, not just a written strategy.
Yeah, and we're seeing it happen already, right? A lot of people are getting more sophisticated about their approach to even LinkedIn, but a few B2B marketers, a few B2B brands are definitely jumping on that TikTok hype, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
The key thing about TikTok is like punchy short form video content, right? How are you experimenting with short form content, no matter the channel at the moment?
Yeah, so, I went down a personal experimentation with TikTok and my personal brand. I wanted to, I saw the short form format and I thought this would be a really great medium to do some like high value, quick marketing tutorial tips, something like that. I called it 60-second marketing. And I kind of went, at it for maybe 6-8 months, and I noticed decent engagement, but I kind of started to get the sense that I don't know if the B2B audience is engaging on TikTok specifically. I think it's seen as like, we need to be doing TikTok, but I think that also is more applicable to B2C brands. My theory now and how I feel about TikTok is that, if you think about the audience consumption habits of TikTok or whatever social platform or channel that you're going after, where are people not only going to watch that content, but when are they going to watch that content? And for me, I was making TikTok content, but when I was consuming TikTok was outside of work. And when I would see work-related content, I would swipe past it faster than possible because I was being realistic with myself that I was going to TikTok to be entertained rather than to be educated. And so I wasn't engaging with that type of content. It didn't feel native to everything else that I was consuming. Where if I go to LinkedIn, if I see all engaging or all entertaining content, then I'm more quick to tune out because the audience consumption habit for me on LinkedIn is more educational, learning, connecting. So that's kind of an experiment where it's like, I don't know if TikTok is the answer for B2B.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of excitement around it because it's technically still a bit of a promised land in terms of organic engagement, right? But that doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. And that's a really good example. It's the context of the platform. You want to go there to be entertained, wind down, maybe vegetate after a long day of work. You don't want to necessarily think about it. That's a really good way of looking at it. There's a clear theme I found when researching you that runs through your career journey from start to finish, which is video, right? Which is why we're here today to talk about it. Tell us a bit about how you got into this world in the first place.
Yeah. I kind of started as the traditional, hey, I think I'm into photography. I'd like to learn photography. So at a young age, I taught myself. I saved up. I bought my first Canon DSLR and started taking more pictures and doing this and doing that. And then that kind of, I found myself, doing things for friends that needed help with projects. And I kind of was the person that could unlock video for them. So if it was like a buddy who, thinks he's going to be in a band and he wants to make a music video, now I'm the guy that can help him do that. Because, it was also at the kind of intersection of like photo, capable cameras also being video capable. And so you kind of had this 2-in-1. And so as I was kind of more self-taught on photo, then it was very natural to go, oh, well, this records really good video compared to my phone or compared to anything else that I have available to me at the time. And so that quickly kind of started to define what I was interested in. And that's then eventually what I went to school for and went to film school and got, kind of a degree in television and film production. And then, post school, it was like, well, I could either go down the route of being the wedding videographer guy, which I'd done a couple times. And I will say it's a rite of passage for anybody who's in video. You have to do a wedding or two. I probably don't trust you if you haven't done a wedding or two and you're into video. But I quickly learned that is not where I'm going to find it's so high stress. It's highly templatized. It's mindless. It's crazy. It's like the most important day for someone else and is like the most just is not a great experience on the editing and production side of it. And there's people that do it and good for them.
And you've got to force the smiles and try and look like you're having a good time as well on the day.
Totally. And so I was like, I could go down this route and I could go down the freelance route. But I also feel like I've always had this kind of mindset inclined to marketing, thinking about things differently or from a different angle or different perspective. And that's when I found myself into marketing. I found myself on a marketing team that needed video in-house at a B2B SaaS company. And so I found myself again unlocking video for a brand, but it was also my crash course into marketing. And that was, I remember sitting in a boardroom and I was like, they're writing stuff on the whiteboard and they wrote MQL. And I'm like, I have no idea what that is. I have no idea what these people are talking about. Right. And so literally it was a crash course in marketing. And I was only there for like 9 months and then there was a restructuring and my role's eliminated, found myself freelancing for a bit and then really started to work with more B2B companies and lean on that experience. Cause again, I'm applying video in a sense that helps them reach their buyers or helps them reach their prospects. And then Chili Piper came up in my LinkedIn feed and I applied and it was a video role and it was a similar setup where we want to unlock video at our brand. But I had this marketing experience that I, gathered over the past few years and brought that in. And that the rest is kind of history.
Yeah, absolutely. I find that a lot of my guests and marketing friends in general, they describe it as falling arse backwards into marketing through writing or in your case, video. And speaking of Chili Piper, took a look at some of the video content you've created, and they all range from simple talking heads, podcast repurposing to flashy and innovative, but they all have one thing in common. They are captivating, I think. Before we zoom out and we talk about all of that stuff like SaaS marketers love talking about, right? Business objectives, the strategy side of things. Could you tell us a little bit about your creative process as both a photographer and a marketer alike?
Yeah, for me, my creative process is always starting with why. You can read a great book by Simon Sinek called Start With Why. And that is very much true to who I am, back to like looking at things differently or maybe challenging the status quo. Why do we need to do this? And help using that answer to help clarify the approach. It doesn't matter if we're doing a video or if we're spinning up a podcast. It's going, why does the world need another podcast? Or why does the world need another explainer video? Because if you ask that question, You go, well, the world needs another explainer video because we don't have one. That's not the right answer, right? That's not it's a right answer, but it's not the answer that's going to get you the results that you want. And it goes, oh, well, the world needs another explainer video because they don't know X, Y, and Z about our brand, and they commonly don't understand our functionality for this, this, and this. He goes, okay, now we have handles to actually build an outline and eventually a script and then a video. And so, for me, it's always intention and it's always context up front, because often we see the shiny end thing as the thing, when in reality, it's about that 80% of that pre-work that comes before the actual production of the thing. And I see a lot of brands, we go back to TikTok, we chase the shiny object to TikTok, but we don't have the right approach to it, or we don't look at it in a way of like, how can we be a brand doing that differently instead of just finding some social tool that just spits out everything to everywhere, on every channel at the same time.
Yeah, forget about casting a wide net and getting a little bit more intentional. One thing you said a second ago in the context of explainer videos is kind of, what do people not understand about our product, right? That's a very key specific reason that an explainer video should exist in the world. How do you go about finding what that is in the first place?
I think the first thing, like with that approach, is actually internally getting everybody that's a stakeholder on, let's say, an explainer video project to understand that this video is not brand centric. It's actually customer centric. And that's the biggest kind of sub mistake of approaching an explainer video is brands go, this is our chance, elevator pitch. And, in an explainer video, you have about 90 seconds to get through from problem to solution before you start, doing other things in the video. And, often it's like, this is our chance, this is our billboard, this is our moment to say, this is who we are and this is what we do. When in reality, this is your opportunity to make somebody feel something that makes them relate to you, that makes them want to trust you and actually go on a journey with you. And there's deep rooted, strategy in there of like the same storytelling process that you see in movies, where you have, we've heard about the hero's journey. If you haven't, it's think about Star Wars, think about Lord of the Rings, think about all these movies where you have someone like a Luke Skywalker or a Frodo Baggins, and they meet a guide along the way, like a Gandalf, like a Yoda. And if they don't meet and learn from that person, they wouldn't be successful in the end. If they didn't change who they were to become better, they wouldn't be that more successful person. And that's the same interaction that buyers are having with a brand. The brand needs to guide them to that desired success. And so really, back to your question, it's actually deprogramming marketing teams to say, hey, this isn't when we shout about us. This is actually when we make someone feel seen on the other end of a screen, that then they want to click buy now or, get a demo.
Yeah, 100%. A lot of what you just talked about harks back to, I think it's Story Brand by Donald Miller, I think. He talks about the hero's journey and the guide. Do you embed yourself as that guide within the story, or is it kind of more done in a subtle way, shall we say, without deception, of course?
No, I think that's a very healthy positioning for a brand, because I think people are also resonant to humility. It doesn't mean you can't be superior. It doesn't mean you can't say you're number one, but in your core messaging or in your core kind of go to market message that you're saying to your audience is that, we help you do this, or, that value exchange that's going to happen. Because a lot of times, if we're kind of diving into like messaging, right? It's like a lot of brands are like, the number one blah, blah, blah to do this. Well, okay, good for you. I don't know how that helps. Like that's good. Someone told you that you do that. It's like, okay, great. Or it's like, unlock something intelligence. And you're like, well, I don't know how to do that. That's why I'm here. It leaves you with a sense of like, I don't have tools to actually do what you're saying to do. Or if you tell me, we help people like you do X, Y, Z through this, and that. Oh, okay, great. I totally know what's ahead of me. I know exactly what to expect, what I want, and where we're going to go. Awesome. I'm on board, right?
100%. Speaking to the language of the customer as opposed to these vague platitudes about unlocking intelligence, as you put it. I laugh because I'm pretty sure I've watched I'm not sure what brand it was or even what the product, which probably speaks to the issue at hand, right? The fact that I don't remember. And I'm pretty sure the word unlocking and intelligence appeared in that explainer video at some point. So a little bit of
Yeah.
a throwback there. You mentioned a second ago that there's often some work to reprogram marketing, I think is the way that you put it. And I know a lot of content marketers are going to be listening right now thinking, fuck, how do I do that? Because they're constantly not necessarily fighting against stakeholders, but trying to make a case for something a little bit more not creative or different or unique in the world. How do you go about doing that?
It's a hard balance between structure and creativity. Because if you have a structure in place that's so rigid, you may find yourself that you're putting the cart in front of the horse by having a structure before you have the content. That goes back to starting with why. But if you have so much creativity without a framework, you often find yourself you find yourself in a million different directions. There's an author named Erwin McManus, and he talks about creative conduits. That if you have conduits to funnel creativity through, you'll often find more freedom within the constraints because you've given yourself, we can go from A and we can go to B, and between A and B, this is the room that we have to work with, rather than thinking about we have A to Z and it's a million different options, right? And so it's that fine balance of like, I need to think about how to, like, if we're thinking about deprogramming, right, and like demarketing the content team, it's in a way like if there's somebody on the team that can almost act as a creative facilitator in a brainstorming session, that's often a really powerful tool. If there's somebody on the team that's passionate about brainstorming and facilitating those meetings, creating some frameworks within brainstorming and then having that person, generate next steps and do these next thing and follow-ups and almost like project managing creative brainstorms helps yield those different results. Because often we go into creative brainstormings and we have a million different great ideas, quote unquote, right? Because we all are attached to our own ideas. And then we leave that meeting with a sense of like, well, now what? Right? How do we gain consensus? How do we get to that right idea? How do we do that? So that's one tool that we like to do, is like a very focused brainstorm session. It's like, you could use the Crazy Eights framework, which is like 8 ideas in 8 minutes. Each person needs to generate 8 ideas in 8 minutes. That means you have 1 idea per minute max. So it doesn't allow you to get too in the weeds with your ideas. Stay high level, punch out that main thought, concise idea, and move on to the next one. And then come together, vote on them, talk about it, give the idea, and then you walk away with the meeting of here's our top 3 big ideas, from this meeting. But it does require somebody to help facilitate that. And so that's kind of, I guess, creativity with a framework. But then obviously in the execution side, that's a ripple effect, right?
Yeah, 100%. Who is that facilitator for you guys?
I like to see that I'm in that role a lot. I would say one of our product marketing managers is also Madeline is really great at that, and it's just, again, it's somebody that can stay high level in the meeting and not get too. If we all go, oh, that's such a good idea, let's park here for 5-10 minutes, right? That isn't always the most productive. So somebody that can bring it back to the main goal of the meeting of like, we're trying to solve this problem with this idea.
Awesome, man. Are you involved in the social media strategy for
So,
Chili?
it's interesting. I am and I'm not, but I am. And what I mean by that is when I was hired, I reported to our head of social media. And so I was or is head of social community and partnerships. And so I kind of found myself often in those, let's analyze social from the previous week. Let's figure out why this worked, why this didn't work. Here's 10 ideas for next week. And we all kind of collaborate and do creative brainstorming around it. And so I often found myself very aligned with the social team and involved. And then now just recently in the past month, I'm overseeing our social media team now. And the, the strategy there is we just have a very unique brand voice. We have a very unique brand positioning. We know who we are and we're not afraid to say that. And we definitely want to, like, again, go back to that. Why does the world need another brand account? Right. So we answer those questions with the content or the posts that we put out. Because often brands just see, let's say, LinkedIn as a megaphone billboard, just shout at people and they'll like it, right? No.
Not the way it works, sadly. The reason I asked is because I was curious to get your opinion on what's working well at the moment, but I think I have a better question that involves taking a step up. Because I noticed that you're an advisor for Audience Plus, and a lot of the people who kind of follow them, Anthony, etc., they believe in the philosophy behind building a media brand. Do you have any opinions on this and kind of where, this, it's not necessarily a trend, it's more of kind of like a movement when you look at Lavender and even Zora with Zora Plus.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you think it's going?
I think it speaks to what I touched on before, which would be, that future, that content marketing role. I think that's a great, looking at Audience Plus and owned media, it's probably a great application of the future of content marketing. Creative strategist, how are we taking this idea and how is that applied in video? How is that campaign applied in a podcast? How is that campaign applied in a blog post or a written piece or social post? Across the board, it's almost like content strategy and distribution, I feel like, is kind of that future role that we were talking about before. But, the idea of owned media is honestly, we put our content on LinkedIn and tomorrow LinkedIn could say, you violated some rule, see you later. And all of our 56,000 followers don't ever see us again. Right. And so, the concept is that you own the content you put out. You're on some sort of platform or system. So like Audience Plus solves that solution. They allow you to have that owned media kind of CMS in a really pretty, beautiful wrapper. It feels like Netflix for your content. It's awesome. And there's a lot of brands leveraging it and it's great. And so it's the idea of like, let's take the control away from some of these platforms because the algorithm changes weekly. This changes monthly. We now have these badges that everybody wants and all this stuff is just a lot of noise. How can we then, own the process and own the data, right? Because we only know so much about how social maybe influences our deals, right? But if we can get a little bit more data on a CMS side of a platform, obviously that helps us be more strategic with our next steps. Now, all to say, I don't think an owned media, like full on media arm strategy is for everyone. I think that's maybe more of a trend. You're saying like owned media. I don't think owned media is a trend.
No.
I think the media arm aspect of it is a trend where it's like, we need to have programs and shows and seasons and series of this and this. And I think that's a little bit of a shiny object right now, because I see a lot of, again, function over form, where we need to put out stuff, but why? And it goes back to, again, are people watching 15-minute episodes of something in their work time? Like I see some of the content that brands are putting out in their media arm, and I'm like, if I was in an office, would my boss, I work from home, but it's like, if I was in an office, would my boss watching me watch this like anime video about B2B SaaS be work appropriate? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't know. I think we've kind of like swung really far and we're like emulating consumer habits in B2B. And I don't know if but I don't know. It's just, I think it's gone a little too far in some aspects.
Yeah. To be honest, I do wonder about the effectiveness of it because it looks really cool. And don't get me wrong, I have watched a lot of things out there by various SaaS brands, and I do remember them because of it. But yeah, like you said, are people watching the 15-minute long video about, this very entertaining topic because it's entertaining? So yeah, I do wonder about its longevity, as it were.
And I think, like, to your point, like you and me, I think, or a lot of people around these brands that are doing this, I think a lot of people appreciate the effort over
100%.
anything else.
Yeah.
Because it does take a lot of effort, back to like pre-production planning and all the stuff that goes into programmatic content.
Yeah.
There we go. We got there. The effort that goes into the programmatic content is almost like a goal in itself. So when you see someone else doing that, you're like, dude, that's so awesome. You're doing that. You're making things, and it's awesome. And a lot of the buzz on social almost seems to be around the effort and not the content itself.
I was literally just thinking about Obed Durrani from Hockey Stack. He recently published a post about this Mortal Kombat. I'm not sure if it's a program or a campaign, not sure what to call it, but I noticed like a few of the, they had Rand Fishkin in that Mortal Kombat voice. And he kind of broke down in a LinkedIn post how he went about doing it with AI tools and all that good stuff. And I didn't really realize what he was doing until I saw the post where he broke down what he was doing. So it's a really, really good point. But it might only work when you're marketing to marketers in the same breath, because we are the only people who might find that interesting, I suppose. What do you reckon?
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I think Obed I think on what they're doing at Hockey Stack, I think they're all fantastic marketers, and what they are doing is unique. And at the end of the day, unique is a tool to be remembered. Like, we're here having a conversation on your podcast about it,
Yeah,
right? And
100%.
we just mentioned their brand, and we just mentioned who they are. So, take it what you will. If the Mortal Kombat thing was like an effective thing on its own, on like standing on its own, we don't know. But the fact that we're talking about it here means other people are probably talking about it, which means they're going to be top of mind when the time is right. But I think if everybody decides to do that strategy and make it look like that, then we're all just shifting from trend to trend to trend. So it has to be authentic to your audience.
I totally agree. Say what you like about him, but Gary Vee talks about document, don't create. And I think what, people like Obed have created in order to document something. So there's a little bit of meta going on there. Before we wrap up, tell me a little bit about the hourglass model. I was having a look at your LinkedIn and I noticed that that's one of your most popular posts.
Yeah, the hourglass model, I mean, it really is thinking about, like, it kind of goes back to that, like, the context and the why and how, we're thinking about things from the start versus at the end. Because if you think about like a content funnel, it might be, format. So let's say like you're a brand and you say like, okay, we want to go to TikTok. We want to be on TikTok, YouTube, this. Well, now we've put the distribution at the top. And then now what's going to be next? Okay, well then, distribution platforms, and then maybe story, and then maybe the campaign, right? Because we're going to try to fill those platforms with content rather than what is this content we could make, and then how could we redistribute that onto these different platforms. So the content hourglass for anybody listening is really picture an hourglass, and at the top, at the widest point, you have campaign. Then under that, you have why. Then you have messaging. Then you have story, and then you have platforms. So if we just pause there, your campaign is obviously the context. This is the top of the piece of content. This is where everything is coming out of, is like, why do you need to do this for your business? Okay, well, we need to increase demo requests on the website. Okay, great. Now, why do we need to do that? Well, because this is down and this is down. And why do people need to click get a demo? Okay, because, you answer that question. Then it's messaging. How are we going to talk about that in a way that makes them feel like they want to click get a demo? Okay, great. How do we distill all of that now into a story that is compelling? If we go back to the hero's journey in a way that, we're going to guide them, we're going to do this thing, and they're going to have this great result. Okay, great. Now we figured that out. Now what platforms do we want to go to? Okay, we want to maybe make a video on YouTube, and we want to then cut that into shorts. Okay, now we can go into the production portion. So now we're at the tip of the hourglass, right? And we're going back down, we're getting wider again. So now we're actually, this platform and produce part is the tiniest, because it really is the least important part. Platform is not the most important part. Obviously, you need to be where your audience is, but if you're where your audience is and the content sucks, it doesn't matter. So you need to start with the bigger part and get down. So now you're producing, then you're in your format. So that would be then, this is a 90-second video that turns into 10 shorts that do this, that go here. And then we can put this into an AI tool that spits out a blog post that then we'll put on there. And then cadence. How are we going to publish that? In what order? In what way? And then engagement and actions are the final two that get to the bottom. And they're at the bottom because that's where you're going to measure the success. And that's where then you'll start the whole funnel over again, right? You'll turn it upside down and you'll start again and all the stuff will fall through.
Using all the learnings to, start from the beginning, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Engagement, meaning, how you're measuring it, and then actions for how you're going to move forward and do this again in the future.
Absolutely. What a wonderful, succinct way of putting it. I know we're running out of time, so I'll include a link to that post in the show notes. Before I let you go, there's one question I love to ask all of my guests. What are you working on right now that you are most jazzed about?
That's a good question.
That you're allowed to share.
I think right now, the thing I'm kind of most excited about that we're working on is we're looking at our social media in a way of how can we continue to build almost a community within our brand account on LinkedIn natively. So many times, and we're guilty of this, right? It's like, hey, link in the comments and go over here and do this action and do this thing after you've read this post, right? But going back to how can we add as much value in the timeline as possible and then generate, almost a place where people can comment with peers and coworkers and whoever else in the comments and create this sense of, the Chili Piper LinkedIn posts are where community can happen instead of even needing to go to a separate Slack group or all these different things we get invited to. We got to be here and do that and attend this thing and be in the Slack channel and all this stuff, right? Like, how can we just do it where people are already consuming the content? And so that's something I'm really excited about. And then just looking ahead at some of the products that we have coming down the line and how we're expanding kind of our whole offering and how we can kind of re-explain that in a creative way. We're also re-looking at our messaging right now, which is exciting. So kind of going back to that hero's journey and how we can kind of think differently about our own, how we talk about ourselves to people and how they relate to us.
Yeah, 100%. Exciting to hear that you're working on new positioning, especially as, from what I've heard, your customers love you and marketers admire you. So to make that even better is going to be fascinating to see. Nolan, this has been such a fun and insightful chat. There's a lot of ideas I have to take forward with this podcast and my own video content, so thank you. Where can people learn more about you?
LinkedIn, that's where I invest all of my social media. I decided long ago that Facebook's not for me anymore. Instagram was a waste of my time. We talked about my experiments on TikTok. LinkedIn is where I connect with, people and have valuable conversations and connections.
Amazing. I'll include a link below. Nolan, thank you so much. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you so much, Tom.